Нажимаю на VK. Okay, and
And nothing.
wait a second. Okay, it works. It works. Can you check?
Okay. Sound is yeah. Okay, checking. Okay, 1 second. Yeah. Okay, almost ready. Okay.
That's quite
1
strange
second.
because я вижу, что вроде бы нету кнопки опубликовать
Almost
трансляцию, но
ready.
трансляция вроде бы как бы идет.
Okay.
That's quite
Ага,
strange.
Да,
так,
я
вижу,
вижу, ВКонтакте уже идет. Да.
трансляция идет, да.
Okay.
Все, идет, зашла.
So,
Зашла.
So,
Yeah.
hello everybody, this is Экспертное мнение, and today our special guest is Christopher Huntley, also known as Крис Америкос.
Hello, Chris. Как дела?
Отлично, отлично. Спасибо, что вы меня сюда пригласили. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Okay. So we know your big secret, Chris. You speak Russian. Is it true?
Чуть-чуть, да.
Toot. Okay.
So guys, the main topic for today is why you don't have to be native to get students. So, before we start, we want to know more about you. So, Chris, would you share something about you? On your website, there is so much information, like, you know, you're a teacher, trainer, coach, influencer, entrepreneur, so many things. So, Chris, who you are mainly?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me here, guys. Thanks to everybody who's watching right now and, you know, spending your time getting some information here. I really hope that I can share something that's going to be useful. So yeah, a little bit about me. I mean, that's not the most interesting part, I think, but a little bit about me. In 2008, I finished my master's degree in international relations, and I decided to go to Russia. And when I got to Russia, the plan was that I was going to be there for 3 months just to kind of see what it was all about, because I had traveled to other places. I lived in a few places in Europe during high school. And to me, when I met Russian-speaking people in the States, they just seemed so different from European people. And I wanted to figure out why that was. And so I was really interested in that. And I planned, you know, I thought, okay, I finished my master's degree. I'll go to Russia for 3 months and then I'll come back and I'll get a real job. That was the plan. But I went to Russia, stayed for 3 months, and I wanted to stay longer. So I had to get a job in Russia. And the only job I could get, because I didn't speak any Russian at that time, was teaching English. And so I found a language school. They hired me. They gave me some training to be a teacher. And that's how my journey started. So about a year and a half after that, I opened up my own language school, offline school in Yekaterinburg. We had a couple different offices, and we started to invite foreign teachers to Yekaterinburg to teach there. And so we did that for 6 or so years. I was in Russia for 8 years. I lived in Yekaterinburg for 8 years. And then we moved back to the United States, and I had to move everything online. And, you know, we still had a girl in Yekaterinburg who was running that business, you know, our исполнительный director. And she, you know, she was still there on the ground running things, but you know, the money that we were making there wasn't really enough to survive, to have a comfortable lifestyle in the United States. So we had to rethink things and had to move everything online. And that's when I had to start learning digital marketing. And so, you know, that was the beginning of like that next part of the journey. And, you know, I think that a lot of teachers who are watching this probably have gone through something similar, especially when the virus
Yes, of course.
hit us. You know, everybody had to move online. And, you know, I was lucky because I closed the offline school maybe 2 months before COVID. So I was really happy
clients.
about that, because our online school was more profitable than the offline school. And so I came back to Yekaterinburg and I closed it. And my friends were saying, "Oh, Chris, I'm sorry you're closing it." And I was like, "You should congratulate me, because
Yeah.
this business was just taking money. Like, it wasn't really making a lot of money, and the online teaching business was much more profitable." So I was really happy. And then COVID happened, and I was like, wow, I was so lucky. But so I think a lot of teachers who are watching this and who will watch in the future, they probably have kind of the same questions in their mind, like, is offline teaching
to do?
yeah, how do you move online, and like, what's the difference? Because a lot of people feel offline education is more effective than online education. And I mean, COVID, I think, helped to change a lot of people's minds, but still there's a lot of people who are making that transition. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. And so now our business has 3 parts. We teach English to students from over 100 different countries right now. We focus on spoken English. And then the second part of our business is that we coach teachers how to set up an online business. And then the third part of our business is a marketing agency. So a lot of those businesses that they set up need to find students, need to find clients, and we can help them do that through
We will
digital
have
marketing.
a few questions about this, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we will discuss these questions a bit later. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. It's like the big story of your life. You have
Yeah.
So you have to write your own notes. Okay, thank you. This is great. Okay. So I have a question. So our topic is you don't need to be a native to get students. Okay. But I have a question. So what is like to be a native speaker? Are there any advantages you use?
So yeah, this whole idea of native speaker, and over the last few years, there's been this discussion about native speakerism.
Yeah.
And so, for a long time, I've been telling people that not only are native speakers not better teachers always, but usually they're not better teachers because they haven't had to learn the language through the structure that a person who learns the language as a second language has to follow. It doesn't mean that a native speaker can't be a good teacher. They just have to like become unhypnotized, unbrainwashed of like, I'm a native, so everything I say is right. Right. So like a lot of times native speakers approach language this way, not only English, right? Our topic is not about English native speakers, but it's about just native speakers in general, right? So you're Russian native speakers, and the same thing happens there, that, because, for example, I have another website and another YouTube channel where I teach Russian to people in English. And so I get to feel the effect of being the non-native speaker who's teaching the language. And so yeah, there are advantages of being a native speaker, of course, because a lot of the market, a lot of the students and clients believe that native speakers are better. They believe that you have to have contact with native speakers to get some kind of big results or big progress. And like exposure and immersion, these things are important, right? They really speed up progress, but that doesn't mean that a person who can just speak to you in a language can also teach. And so I think that this is a big mistake that a lot of learners make. So I think there are advantages to being native and there are advantages to being non-native. And going with our topic today, that you don't have to be a native to find students, to get clients, it's absolutely true, because you just need to focus on what your advantage is. And if you just focus on your advantage, you'll have your students.
All right, so we're talking about advantages of a native speaker. Okay, and let's talk about the advantages of a non-native speaker. So can you just divide advantages of non-native speaker and native speaker? So our non-native speaker, I'm just imagining, so they're better than native speakers.
In many cases they are, especially if we like, the most obvious one is when we separate students by level. And when you have someone who's 0 level, beginner, false beginner, elementary, like even some of the higher levels too, but especially these lower levels, it's like I've been in a situation where people wanted me to teach that level, right? And so I'm going to go into the room, and what am I going to do with them if I don't speak their target, their first language, right? I'm just gonna repeat the same things again and again, and it's going to be really long, really frustrating. Whereas a person who just speaks their first language can say, "This means this, and this means this," and in 2 seconds, they can understand something that the native probably couldn't have explained in 2 minutes, right?
So, yes, there is a big difference between very, very young learners and with adults, of course,
Yeah.
because for very, very young learners, you can provide classes English only without any problem, because the value of context, so not so much information for very young learners.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I should probably clarify that everything that I say today will be related to teaching adults. I have no experience teaching children. I don't teach children. All of my businesses, all of my things that I do are about teaching adults only.
All right. Okay, we got it. Okay.
Okay, so you told me that you have students from more than 100 countries. How do you find an approach with everyone?
I mean, it actually, I think that it's really beneficial to have people from different countries in the same room. You know, it really helps to keep the classroom focused not on a specific like dialect or regional accent of English or something specific to one place. It's using English as the global communication tool, right? And so when you have a person from Thailand, from Russia, from Mexico, from Kenya in the same room, and they're speaking to each other, you can't go back. You can't go back to your first language. You can't go,
for sure.
like, you might start saying something in your first language if you can't remember an English word, and people are just looking at you like,
yeah, they start staring at you. What's going on? Yeah, that's true. All right.
So not having that, that emergency exit that you have when you're with a group of people from the same country, that's really useful, I think.
Okay, but sometimes it's really hard to understand. So, for example, people from different countries because of their accent.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about it?
I think it's really important for people who are going to be using English on the global level to understand a lot of different accents, and not only native accents. Native accents, whatever we call that.
Native accent, yeah. California accent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or clear British RP, of course.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, is it kind of important so to distinguish this accent? So this is for example, Russian accent, Thai accent, Chinese accent. So do you need to learn all these accents? Is it important?
I think that it is important to know that different people make different sounds and that it's the same word, right? I watched a couple of your previous episodes, and I think Yulia kind of touched on this too, that, just because a British English speaker says the word a little differently, it doesn't mean that American English speakers can't understand them, and that children, when they're learning the language, they like at the center where she was teaching, she gave an example of this. She said that, the children had sessions with different teachers with different accents, and they understand them fine. And that kind of made me think about, Russian, Spanish, other languages that I've been learning. As a Russian speaker, you might hear someone instead of saying instead of saying говорю, you might hear them say говорю.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And so like you associate that with like a Ukrainian accent or like certain areas that people speak and say that sound instead of a different sound. So for you, you still understand exactly what they're saying. You just understand that they said a different sound, but you've had a lot of like experience hearing that in different contexts or like coming into contact with that. So like me as a non-native hearing that, it took me a lot of times of meeting a person who speaks like that before I could understand that, you know, that I could understand that this he sound replaced the ge sound in different words. And similarly in Spanish, like it takes a while to understand that, like, for example, I was in Argentina recently, and that's where I picked up my mate, special tea drink from Argentina. And so like in Spanish, like the word, for example, for beach is playa. And so like in Mexico, they'll say playa, but in Argentina, this letter Y is pronounced like sh. So it's playa, which sounds more like Russian.
Oh, yeah, playa.
So like, how do like native speakers of Spanish automatically understand that ya and sha are the same? And so they can hear so many different words
so
with
they
these
can feel
different
it.
sounds. Right. So like as a native speaker of English, I can do the same thing with British English, Australian English, whatever, you know? And so from the flow of the speech, you can understand from exposure that like some people replace this sound with a different sound. So I think it's good for learners of English and any other language to hear how people from different countries speak. The biggest example is probably India.
India,
of course.
Right. And so I recently became really interested in that because for a few years, a lot of the students in my classes would say, I want to speak with people who have good English and I don't want to speak with people from India. And I thought like, well, that's interesting. Like it's difficult for me to understand them sometimes, but like, why don't people like, why are people going to avoid them for that? And so I started to look into it deeper. Actually, there's a special type of English called Indian English, and it has special vocabulary, special pronunciation. And so like I made it my job to like, I need to study Indian English as a American speaker. I need to learn other types. Yes. And so I think that's really important to put, like, if we're going to use English on this global level to communicate and understand with people around the world, then a good teacher, I think, needs to be open to understanding all of these types of Englishes. And maybe you don't have to pretend that you're from a different place. You speak how you speak and you are the person who you are, but
who you are, yeah.
But it's still important to understand these differences, I think.
У нас тут подписчики говорят о том, что ты красивый.
Oh.
И про себя, да?
Очень рада тебя видеть. Okay, so I also have a question. So, Chris, could you tell me what difficulties did you face when you started working with foreign students?
So I got my start in Russia, and the biggest difficulty there was cultural differences. And I think that probably this is still true today, that I see that a lot of people, especially maybe teachers who come from other countries, they can learn the language to such a high level, but still miss a lot of the cultural aspects of the language. Because even though it is this global communication tool, usually the language is like a lot of things that you say in the language and the way you use the language is related to the people who like where the language originates from, right? So like I'm not gonna talk about селедка под шубой with anybody who's not Russian, right? Like that topic will never come up. Like nobody's gonna say like, you know what? I really want to have this salad. You know what I mean? Like that's never going to happen. So like there's some things, and so like, when do you talk about that? So that's usually in the context of New Year's, and that's usually in the context of, right? So like a festivity, like a celebration. And so there's some cultural things that go along with language that are important to understand. And the same as you know, sure, in Russian you've got please and thank you and all of these polite words, but just when you say them and how often you say them is very different from how English is used, right? So even this aspect of the language, sometimes people who have a very high level of English miss those things. And so I think cultural differences, you know, are the hardest when dealing with people from around the world. I really try in our English program to create like I've been talking about, like a global environment. So to include everyone and to really take some positions on things that aren't going to push people out, and you know, so that everyone can express themselves without limiting other people. I think that's really important.
So that's a great answer.
Yeah. Okay. Chris, how did you realize you want to be a teacher? So one day I woke up and say, oh, to myself, okay, I want to be a teacher. What a wonderful day.
Yeah, when I first came to Russia, I wanted to stay longer, and there was no other job other than teaching English for someone who didn't speak Russian.
Okay,
And
so this is the first reason, the main reason, so why you became a teacher. Yeah.
That's how I started. Yeah. But
okay.
I quickly just really liked it a lot, and so now it's a big passion for me.
Okay, sounds cool.
What about you guys? How did you start?
Oh, it's a long story.
We started from China.
Yeah, we started from China,
Yeah?
so we had experience, yeah. And teaching young learners, yeah, special Chinese students. So yes, I'll start there.
So the
in
problem
China.
with culture are very familiar to us.
Yeah,
so
I can imagine.
We face them too.
Mm-hmm. And how did you cope with that? How did you overcome those cultural differences in the classroom? I'm sure the first weeks were rather difficult.
Yes. It was kind of, you know, I was kind of like a clown in a big classroom. So that was a really terrible experience. So for the first couple of days, so I was like a clown. So I was dancing, so in front of my students. So I was trying to show them something interesting. It's like, okay, so here I got flashcards. Okay, look. So I showed them flashcards, and okay, look at the flashcards. So were you seeing it? So yeah, so the first experience was really terrible in China, but then, okay, it's just a habit, Okay, something like this.
Uh-huh.
So, uh-huh.
Okay.
So we just get it in.
Yeah. Okay, Chris, can you sing aloud the country whose students are the easiest to work with? China, Russia. Yep. Countries or country. Yeah.
Easiest to work with.
Yep.
I don't think it depends on the country. It's really individual, based on the individual, you know. Yeah, I can't say one country or another. I think that people who have more exposure to foreigners and have experience dealing with foreigners typically are able to be more open to different ways of thinking and expressing themselves. So people who have never been in that situation before tend to be centered on their own culture and their own language, and you know, that's not bad. It's just that we in the world that we live in now, everyone's so connected, and I think it's important to meet people from other places. So the people who have met a lot of people before from other places, they have experience, maybe traveling, or maybe just whatever the opposite of being xenophobic is. Those are the easiest people to work with, I think.
Okay, I got it. So it's a question, but really interesting to me. How do you explain the difference between ocean and sea? For Russian student, is really easy, but for example, for Chinese, nope.
That's interesting. Maybe I don't know. I don't know Chinese, so maybe you found that they have one word for this, or they use the same word for this. Is that why it's difficult?
So usually, especially if you work with young learners, you cannot show the picture for it. So you just show ocean, sea, the same picture. Where's the difference?
This picture is water. This picture is water too. Where's the difference?
Yeah.
So Russian students, of course, they understand because there is a ocean, ocean. Okay, sounds familiar, and sea, more.
And
okay,
more.
yeah. So that's quite easy. But for Chinese, just water. What a difference.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. If we think about it like that, what really is the difference, right? And a lot of times the seas and the oceans connect. It's the same water. So, like I think you could explain this difference on different levels, right? So like topographical and
yeah. So if using map, yeah, that's quite easier.
So yeah, I mean, I've never had anyone ask that question before. Just, I guess the easiest, simplest answer would be oceans are bigger, right? Something like this. Big water, not so big.
At all.
Right. So especially if I was teaching, if I were teaching a young learner, then that's probably, I would just keep it there. Like my daughter, who's 3 years old, she asked me the other day, what a volcano is. And I told her, oh, it's like a mountain, but there's this hot lava inside. Papa, why are volcanoes hot? And so I'm sitting there like trying to remember from school and like, why is a volcano hot? And like, well, there's this hot lava. Why? So finally at the end, you know what I said? I said, go ask your teacher at school why volcanoes are hot.
So, or Google it.
Well, we don't let her have any screen time. So yeah.
Okay. Got it. So
okay, so Chris,
do you have
okay. Yeah. Okay, so the question about teachers. So a lot of teachers introduce themselves incorrectly, so to sell themselves absolutely incorrectly too. So what we need to tell potential clients about us?
What do you mean they introduce themselves incorrectly? Like they forget their name?
So for example, so Dennis can mention this.
yeah, so I can explain what do you mean. Look, for example, when you want to tell your offer to others, for example, you want to introduce yourself as a teacher, so I think the most people do it incorrectly because they show some information like I've been studying teaching blah blah blah, my level is this, I'm using books like this. So I think this information is not important, especially if teacher looking for young students or for low levels. So this information for parents, and I think this information is not very important. They have to show something else. So what do you think about it?
I think you're right. I think that a lot of people focus on their education and their experience when they are describing who they are and what they do, instead of focusing on the result that they can help someone get, or focusing on the problem that they can help someone solve.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think that it's more correct to focus on to describe the thing you're going to help them with instead of what you did in your life, right?
Yes. So you have to show how you will help, what problem you will solve.
Right. That's a business. You solve a problem.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, that's another thing. Since you brought this topic up, I feel like it touches on some other important points. Keeping this discussion more focused on the business aspect of teaching. A lot of teachers who teach young learners, who teach children, they kind of forget about the fact that their real client is the parent. Like, yes, we have to get results for the student. We have to work with the student, and we have to teach them correctly, teach them well, get those the results. But at the end of the day, it's the parent who's the client. So you really have to serve two, or sometimes three with two parents, three people. And so it's much more difficult, in my opinion, to have a business that focuses on young learners because you have more than one person that you're serving. It's much easier, in my opinion, to teach adults. And so like a lot of teachers forget about this problem-solving aspect that they are a business. Like, even if a teacher says they hate business, they're not interested in business, they're not interested in money. I have teachers who say that all the time. They work at a school. So if you work at a school, you're still doing business. You're selling yourself to the school, to an employer. So even if you're a teacher as an employee, you sell your services, your time to an employer who pays you money. You're just negotiating a different kind of deal, basically. And you have like one client, the employer.
Yes, that's quite easier.
And then like sub clients through them. But you're still doing business. So it's important to learn how to sell your expertise, how to sell your time and what you do. It's still important to learn that, even if you're going to be an employee in someone else's business. And so the fact that the whole business of sharing your information, sharing your knowledge is based on solving a problem, helping them get the result that they want, that's really important to focus on. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that by talking about themselves too much.
Okay, that's cool. I'm thinking the same way. And I think you've seen many different teachers, and can you tell us what mistakes do you notice in teachers?
Are we talking about how they offer or deliver their services?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the biggest things, and I like to share this, in every talk or interview. One of the biggest things is that a lot of teachers forget that there's two different sides of their business, two different platforms even. They think that everything has to be on one platform and has to be like centered on one thing. So the two sides of the business are, the delivery of the product, the delivery of the service, and the sale and marketing of the service or the product. And these are two very different things. And so many teachers get stuck in the delivery. How am I going to teach? What program? I know that you're really big on helping people find the right programs, and like that's fine. That's part of the delivery. But like there's a whole other aspect of how you're going to teach people, because like you can be the greatest teacher in the world, but if you only teach 4 people because nobody else knows that you exist, then you don't have a lot of impact. And so I feel like there's a lot of teachers out there who feel like they're a superstar. And like, that's how I felt too. I felt like I was the best teacher in the world. I felt like I was like, look at all these people on YouTube and like Contacte and everywhere. And they're, and like, they don't know what they're talking about. And like, I can do this so much better. And so I felt like that in the beginning, but then nobody knew who I was. And like, how many students did I really have? I had like 200 students at the offline school or something. So then when I went online, it was great to learn how to promote myself and reach more people. And so I feel like if you really believe that you're a good teacher, you should also want to share that with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And So, we can go to YouTube and we can find people like Lucy, Rachel, all the big people who are, in the list of the people who are around, 2 to 5 million subscribers on YouTube, and we can see them, we can criticize, we can say, oh, that this wasn't right or that wasn't. But at the end of the day, they've been able to build up this platform, and so they're able to reach a lot of people and have an impact. Whereas, a lot of the people who believe that they're better might not have that. And so there's really these two sides to what you need to do, because you can be great at delivering the service, but how good are you at letting people know that the service exists?
People, one thing, and I want to share it to you too. Does it make sense to work only in one niche? For example, only with teenagers? If so, why? So you're working only with adults, so you're working this way too.
So I absolutely agree with you. It makes sense to focus on a niche, and maybe even a niche within a niche, especially when you're first starting. So when I first started, my sub niche was only Russian speaking adults. Like, that's where I started, so I was only teaching them. I still feel like, because I can explain some things in Russian, I have a little bit of an advantage teaching them. And because 8 years living there, now I'm married to a Russian woman. And so the cultural things, I can relate there. But as you grow, that becomes, you have to widen. It has to become a little more general, because you'll find that very specific niche in the beginning helps you stand out. It shows how you're different from everyone. You serve a very specific market. And so it's easy for your marketing message to directly address that group of people. And so when they see that that's your message, they say, wow, that guy's talking directly to me. But then as you grow, that market you outgrow that market, right? And so as far as teaching adults, I don't really think of it as a niche, because we're teaching people from so many different countries now. The market that we're addressing with this product is hundreds of millions of people, so I don't think of it so much as a niche. But yeah, definitely when people are starting, I absolutely agree with you. They should start with a niche.
Thanks for your answer. We have a question from our subs right now.
Awesome.
Living in Russia, did you notice any obvious problems in methodology which Russian teachers use for teaching ESL students?
Good question. Thanks. So I think every teacher is different. Of course, when I went to universities, I felt like a lot of the universities were stuck in old methods, old ways. Even most of the professors there were a lot older. And so it felt like they came from the period of grammar translation. And, this was the this was the main method that they used. Speaking with a lot of, university students, they kind of also confirmed that was kind of the approach. But I feel like a lot of the private language centers focus on the communicative method. And, in the last 10 years, 20 years, maybe, communicative method has been a hot word, a buzzword. Everywhere you go, they're just oh, communicative method. And then what actually happens in the classroom might be very different, but they say that that's what it is.
Yes, that's true.
So I don't think it's only about Russia, though. I think that it's everywhere in the world that it works like that. That communicative method is kind of the thing that people want to hear, just like the term native speaker. And this is, again, why it's important for everyone who's listening or considering these ideas to think about those two different sides of your business: the delivery and the marketing or sale. in the delivery of my product, being a native speaker means nothing, because native speakers are not inherently, naturally better at teaching. In the marketing of my product, I'm going to use the word native speaker because that's what people want to hear and that's what they want to buy. I have that advantage. I'm going to use it. So I think those are two different things. So I think that a lot of the schools use communicative method in the same way. It's like, we have to tell them it's communicative method because that's what they want. But in actuality, in practice, how do they deliver the product to the student? That might not exactly qualify as communicative method, or, more or less. So I think that's a great question. And I think it's something that's not only about Russia.
Okay, so we have a comment here. So, yep, I have been to some Russian state schools and all English teachers use the grammar translation method. It is so wrong. Okay, yeah, Chris, so what do you think about this grammar translation method? So I think it's a totally wrong mistake.
Yeah, but it makes sense, right? Like thinking back to when you first started learning a language.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely working. So that we start learning Thai. So of course it's working, but it's quite boring.
Yeah, and it has limitations, a lot of limitations, right? But like, if we look at, I have a book here about like the development of the different methods. Like grammar translation was a really important step to get to communicative method because
it's just a method. So
yeah,
you can use it, but it's not the whole your program.
Right. Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
All right, Chris. So what is the difference between the group session and individual education? So whichever is best?
Between group and individual lessons.
Yep.
That's great. I think they both have pluses and minuses. Studying in a group can be great because you can learn from other people's mistakes. It can be great because of the pressure. Like, you have peer pressure, you have other people who are watching you don't want to make a mistake in front of them. So this is like, you can think of this as a positive or a negative in some situations, but then in individual lessons, that's kind of removed. You only are afraid of making a mistake in front of the teacher, and hopefully the teacher tries to remove some of that pressure for you. But of course, with individual lessons, you get more attention and more time directly from the teacher. And hopefully, if they're using some kind of communicative method, that you get more practice during that time too. I don't think that the price difference between individual and group is worth it. Like if I were to go, like I'm learning Spanish. If I were to go study Spanish right now from a school, I would probably join a group, not with an individual teacher. Although like in my schools, in my businesses, we sell individual lessons like way, way, way higher than group lessons. So like, I don't think it's worth it. But I understand that for some people, they feel more comfortable studying like that. Now, I think it is worth it when you're focused on something more than just language. So for example, if you need to apply English to your job, when I was in Russia, I used to teach like the regional director of Coca-Cola. So I would go to the Coca-Cola factory and we would have lessons in his office. And it's like, you're helping them revise some documents, discuss some things that are mentioned in emails, like some policies that come from, a multinational corporation that kind of flow down to them and how they're supposed to interpret it. And so you're just like the teacher is just like a second set of eyes kind of looking over this or something. And so in those cases, it might make more sense to do that individually, where the things that you're discussing don't apply to the whole group. right? But just a simple language lesson, like a intermediate course, for example, I think it's much more effective cost-wise, price-wise, to do this in a group.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I got it. So, a good answer. So, you know, in Russia, the market is overflowing with general English and exams. So, all of them, general English exams, and nothing else.
Especially
So,
YEGA.
yes. So,
yeah.
I think it's time to look at the subjects. Do you think is a good way?
Look at
in
subjects
subjects
as
in
a niche.
English.
Yeah, to teach subjects in English.
Right, like teach math in English, teach
Yeah,
science.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that
It's quite
that is
popular. Mm-hmm.
I think it's a good niche. I think it's a really good option for teachers who want to stand out.
There is no offer. I've never seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also it's sometimes difficult to put into words how that specific focus is going to get someone a result. Because a typical, putting ourselves back into the mindset of the learner, like the learner, we have problems that present themselves to the learner, the problem that they think that they have, right? And then we have like the real problem that they're trying to solve, which most people who are trying to learn a language don't associate those things. So they say, I need to be fluent in English. I need to understand English. And it's like this big abstract thing. It's not, I need exactly this much of English so that I can do exactly this step to get this job, right? Like they don't, most of the time the learner doesn't connect the dots like that. So maybe for teenagers who need to take an exam, it would make sense for them to say, I need to know English about science. I need to know English about math. But also, I think as a customer, their parent or an adult learner probably believes that a general English teacher will be able to solve that too, right? So like I teach general English, but people and like everywhere we just say all we do is speaking. All we do is speaking. That's our message. That's my niche, I guess. Just speaking practice. And still, people contact us all the time. Can you teach me math in English? Can you teach me Can you do IELTS preparation? Can you do right? So I think a lot of learners believe that a good teacher will be able to teach them all of these things in English. So I think on the one hand, it's good for you to stand out by focusing on those niches. But again, like the market, the people who are asking for that thing might not be that big. So it might be a struggle to actually get people. Like right now, one teacher who I work with, he's from the UK, he lives in Thailand, and he focuses on preparing people for job interviews. This is his niche.
That's cool.
And so like we're helping him run ads on Facebook right now. And like a lot of people show interest, but it's, we have to use some very specific language to connect, like, okay, the person knows that they want to get a job in the future, but does that mean that they know that that they will need to prepare for an interview? When you think that you need that, when you just tell yourself like, I want to get a better job, you don't necessarily think immediately like, I really need to do good in this interview. And so you see, like on the marketing side, like connecting the dots between these small niches and the bigger problem that they solve, it can be challenging because a lot of the learners, the audience, the customers, they don't connect those things directly. So you might have to do some education in the way that you market what you do. That's what if that makes sense.
I got it.
Okay. So Chris, I have an interesting question for you. So how do you work with mixed ability students?
Mixed ability students.
Yeah.
That's like all we do all day, every day. We have pre-int, int, upper intermediate, advanced. We have them all in the same groups. It's a challenge. So, I mean, the easy answer is teach to the middle. Like if you have to just give a fast answer, teach to the middle. The long answer is like teach to the middle, but prepare for prepare extra resources.
Extra activities for fast
higher and lower.
For fast finishers, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the standard answer to this question probably. But yeah, I mean, also I think different teachers handle this in different ways, and it depends on the topic, the focus of the lesson, right? So for us, it's speaking practice. So for us, it's easy to handle that because as long as everyone can understand the topic that we're speaking about, okay, this person doesn't speak as well, and this person speaks really well, but they can both practice speaking in the same environment. And then as questions come up, they can be answered. So yeah, right. I think the standard answer applies here.
We have a comment. So Chris, if you realize that your student struggles with understanding you, will you use Google Translator?
Absolutely. I'm not against using technology. I love using technology. Have you guys played around with any of the AI programs that are out now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Of course, we're making some arts, so it's quite popular now.
What about any of the, for example, ChatGPT?
We know about it, but actually didn't try it.
So a couple of weeks ago, I used it to write a book about phrasal verbs. I wrote it in one day. It's 89 pages. Then I told the AI, the artificial intelligence, to write it again in Russian. And I gave it to my wife to check. She's a certified teacher of Russian as a foreign language. And she checked and grammatically correct.
Really? No mistakes? Oh my God.
I mean,
this is the future.
You still
I have
need
to try.
Yeah.
Like you still need to check some things and make it sound natural. Like it will repeat some stuff, but like what you can do with it is amazing. And so it's really like the next 2 to 3 years, people who know how to use AI programs are going to have such a big advantage. Like I wanted to make worksheets for my students about like grammar questions and worksheets, right? I put it in, I have 10 worksheets in an hour, and then they're all formatted. It's all about the right topic with answers. Like it's very easy you can write lesson plans. You tell it, write me a lesson plan about teaching.
About blah, 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 and just tap it to GPT and it will get the result. So yeah,
exactly.
So it's a good way because it's probably difficult to find out the questions. So especially to make questions for one grammar topic. So all the stuff you're remind about is just what you've seen in a book or something like this. But if you're using AI, so it can make many different stuff about it. So
and it also writes code.
Yep, I know.
It also writes code. So
it makes game and so on.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
it's great. So
familiar
I feel like
with that stuff. Yeah.
I feel like this is, in the last 10 to 20 years, you had a big advantage if you just know how to Google something.
Yes, because people don't know how to Google, especially young one. For example, so 18, 20s. So I don't know why, but these people don't know how to Google.
So and like it's not just about typing something into Google, right? It's like there's a skill to asking Google the right question so that it gives you the results that you want. And so with AI, this is just the next level of Google, that you can now tell it, make this and then make this and then change it like this.
Making requests, yeah.
Exactly. So that's how I think about it. But yeah, when I'm in a lesson with students, like I'll share my screen, go to Google, type something in and show them. If maybe I have a question myself about like, okay, maybe I misspelled this word. Like maybe there's a word that I don't use very often and I wrote it in the chat and now I'm thinking to myself, was that right? I'll go to Google and I'll check it right there in front of them. And then I'll tell them, hey, I misspelled it in the chat. Here's the correct one. Like, I don't think teachers should be afraid of technology.
Yeah, Chris. So here, our subscribers, they're asked to repeat that AI program. So what is the name?
It's called Chat GPT.
Oh, okay, Chat GPT.
In fact, if I can share my screen, we can give a little demo of it and people can see, what exactly we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, you can. Shoot.
All right, sweet. So this is...
Wait a second. Give me a second. I need to click a few buttons. Okay, now it's okay.
Awesome. So the website here is chat.openai.com. And if you go there, then you have to register, log in with a Google account or create an account here. And so you can just type in anything and it will start to give it to you. Like, I don't know, let's say, what are the advantages? No, let's say write an academic article about the advantages of the communicative method over the grammar translation method of learning English as a foreign language. And so now, while we're sitting here waiting, it's just going to start writing it. And then I'll tell it to put it into Russian and you guys can tell me if it's good or not. But the great thing here is too, that you can do multiple requests. So like it gives you something that you didn't want and you can tell it to change it. And you can basically tell it to be the type of person or write from the type of point of view that you want it to write from. Going kind of slow right now, so hopefully it works. Usually things stop working when you share your screen, right? But yeah,
Okay.
so like this is
okay.
Yeah, this is how the program works. So we can see it now.
While we are waiting about it, let me ask you a few questions about YouTube. So you have so many subscribers on YouTube. How do you develop it? Did you buy ads? Oh.
So yeah, ads are really important. There you go. Can you see the screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, it's not that many yet. Still working on it, but the subscribers wasn't really the main goal. It was I run ads through this account. So like there's this video with 39 million views and this is just an ad. And I've been running it for 3 years. And so this ad probably brought in 20,000, 25,000 students. So like, yeah, I mean, this is how I grow YouTube, how I've grown YouTube. In the beginning, I did it organically. I just posted and posted and posted. You can do it that way. Definitely. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of work. It's like a full-time job. But also if you just use paid advertising, you can, as long as it's going to be profitable, it doesn't matter. The subscribers are just a bonus, basically, right? Let's try this again.
Something went wrong there.
Yeah. Looks like it's having trouble loading or something. Maybe I'll just go to a new one.
I think it's busy.
Yeah. It usually happens when you're live, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, bad things often happen. Okay, don't worry.
So anyways, I think everyone kind of gets the idea here, but you can go play around with it yourself. But yeah, so all of the social media platforms, they're really good for running ads through, and you can of course build an organic audience there. Like over on Facebook, we've done a decent amount too, like 500,000 there. And
wow.
this is just additional people like following you or whatever from the ads. So as long as the ads are profitable, that's what matters most, right? But like, what are the advantages of organic and paid traffic, right? So like, if you build it organically, if you're running, if you're just posting and getting people from there, of course it's so much cheaper, but it's a lot slower. And when you pay for ads, it moves it faster and it's more predictable. You just have to, from the marketing side, you want to have your metrics of how much it costs to get a new student, a new customer.
Yeah,
And
that's
yeah.
true. Okay. So, we got so much information about it, and our subs want to ask a few questions about your teaching, and the question was, what online tools do you use for teaching? In Russia, most teachers use, of course, Zoom, Znania, WordWall, Bambuzzle or Bamboozle. I have no idea how to.
Bamboozle.
Bamboozle,
We
we call
gotta,
it.
yeah, Bamboozle. We gotta do that. Bamboozle.
Yeah.
Like a big dinosaur.
Yeah, so Zoom is definitely we started using Zoom in 2017, I think. So like back then there was a challenge with Zoom because not everybody knew what it was. So we had to make like instructional videos to teach the students how to download Zoom, how to use Zoom. Nowadays everybody uses it, so it's easy. But back then it was something different because people were using Skype still. And so yeah, Zoom, I mean, we have our own website. We have a platform that we've built the website on, and that allows us to do a lot of the teaching there. So it's mostly Zoom for the live lessons, for the live communication.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So I think so it's gonna be the end. So this is the end. So it's nice talking to you, Chris. Yes. Really. That was
All right. Well, thanks for having me here.
Pleasure,
So,
yeah.
Chris,
Talking to you.
ну, секундочку. Мы сейчас закончим наш стрим. Только, пожалуйста, мы тут со всеми сейчас распрощаемся. Не уходи из зума. Хорошо?
Хорошо.
Okay. So, thanks for coming, of course. Ребята, спасибо, что пришли посмотреть, спрашивали вопросики. Я уверен, что множество людей еще посмотрят это все дело в записи. И I think that it is for today.
That's it.
See you next time.
See you next time.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.